think you have to look at, to start, you have to look at what's the purpose of the SBA. It's a government agency, right? It was established by Congress in 1953, and its mission is to counsel, assist, and protect the interests of small businesses. And as part of that, they've been pretty active in terms of direct credit and investment into small businesses. So they are walking a tightrope between supporting small businesses and being a watchdog or advocate for the taxpayer as a government agency. So they'll always err, on the side of the taxpayer, but their mission is to support small businesses. And like I say, they've done that through leveraging the private sector, through loan guarantees, direct loans, and their SBIC program, which is an equity program. They have a whole lot of different flavors of loan guarantees, and a lot of us have seen their direct loan program, the PPP, which was sort of a new thing. When I started in lending back in the dark ages, you had to have a turn down letter to get 3 of them to get financing from the SBA. So they really, in their SOP, which is their rule book, especially for the 7A program, they want to be the lender of last resort. They're not looking to be the first place businesses go to for credit. But one of their programs is just so attractive, everybody should, and that's the 504. But we should maybe, when you're ready, get into some of the overviews of some of the different types of programs. But that's the orientation I think you have to come to when you start talking about the SBA programs, is they are a government agency, but their mission is to try to help and expand and grow our small businesses, because they are the #1 employer. If you add up all the jobs of all the small businesses, they are the biggest employer by far.
Okay, and so it used to be you had to be 3 banks had to say you're not bank worthy before the SBA would back you?
Yeah, my very first job, I went 18 months in core credit, and they put me out in a rotation to be on a platform at a bank branch. And I had people trotting in, asking for those decline letters. And I asked my trainer, I was like, what's that all about? And they said, oh, well, that's that SBA program. You have to get turned down before you can, get approved. I'm like, okay, well, the rules have changed a lot since then. And particularly the 7A is the one that credit available elsewhere is required to demonstrate, but the rules have gotten a whole lot more relaxed. And I think some of the participants on the call, hello Murphy Business, they use them a lot for business acquisitions. And there's a lot of SBA lending that goes on that is right there next to, adjacent to the credit standards of banks. And there are alternative sources in many cases, and it's a little bit of a gray area, and that's something that the SBA Auditor General is constantly questioning, and the Inspector General is constantly questioning, how far into conventional lending are the SBA programs going. That's a hot topic.
I bet. Do you want to, should I share that chart, that matrix of the different types of loans?
Yeah, it's a little fussy, but yeah, full forward, pull it up. But I'll just start by saying that the 7A program is the agency's flagship program, and it's the up until CARES Act, it was the top program for lending, and it has lots of flavors. So when you see all these little subcategories, like the veterans and the express and the export, those are subsets of the 7A program. But during the pandemic, the CARES Act lending eclipsed the regular lending. I'll tell you that basically the 7A delivers its funding through a guarantee structure. There's about 3,000 participating lenders, mostly banks, that originate and service loans by the SBA, and the 7A by far is the most versatile program. You can see what the use of funds and etc. are there for. It's great for business acquisition. It's a blended use loan, so you can use it for real estate, capital equipment, working capital, debt refinance, business acquisition. But this is the one that they really want to have a credit available elsewhere test, where the lender has to justify that they wouldn't make the loan, or that credit wouldn't be available elsewhere. And one of the most common reasons, there's really two common reasons. The most common reason that lenders use to justify this loan is that the term. So most banks don't do a 20-year amortizing, a fully amortizing loan for commercial. You do a 30-year resi mortgage, but you're not going to do a 20, 25-year commercial loan. So what they do is they guarantee the lender's loan for the entire life of the loan, and that allows the lender to do a really long-term loan. The other key factor is collateral. The 7A is meant to allow a business owner to obtain financing for their business, even if they don't have enough collateral. So that's a common reason for the credit available elsewhere, is that the business wouldn't qualify with a secondary source of repayment. But that's a double-edged sword, as we'll see when you try to, get into the workout space. But all these up here, all these 7As, that's all the cap line. Those are all part of the standard 7A. They just have different flavors and different uses. There is a line of credit, the cap line, not too often used, but it simulates an asset-based line of credit. I don't think the PPP or the CARES Act loans are on this chart, but I would like to mention them. During the pandemic, Congress authorized aid to businesses through two programs, with the SBA as the administrator. One, of course, we've been hearing about a lot, was the Ppp Loan Program, and the other one was the EIDL, the Economic Income Disaster Loans. The PPP followed the 7A model with a guarantee to a private lender, but the EIDL were direct loans funded by the SBA. But the PPP CARES Act initially authorized about $350 billion, and two more rounds were authorized, bringing it up to $943 billion. And as of May 2021, 11.8 million loans were made, totaling $800 billion, with an average of about 68,000. And the number of participating lenders in the 7A program that were being used to distribute these funds grew from about 3,000 to over 5,000. The program really expanded, and it eclipsed 7A loan approvals. See, 7A loan approvals had been running at about $9 billion a year up until the pandemic, and that slowed to about $7.5 billion. And it, basically it eclipsed. We wouldn't even done that in 20 years. What was done with the PPP. Okay, let's flip to the 504 loan real fast. I think it's there, sort of at the bottom of the grid. The 504 is one of my favorite programs, and it has been growing despite the pandemic, probably because of the low interest rates that the program utilizes. It's a fixed asset program, so you can use it for real estate and equipment. And it's got an interesting structure. It's a 50-40-10 structure, where 50% is provided by a first lien loan, generally by a bank, a private financing company. The second lien is provided by a special purpose corporation called a Certified Development Company, or CDC for short, and they provide a 40% total part of the project, and that is basically a debenture that is a secondary market instrument. And then the business owner only has to inject 10% into the project. So the business gets basically 90% fixed asset purchase, financing, or refinance. So here's the icing on the cake. Not only is it a long-term fixed rate 20-year loan, but the February rates for the 40% piece, the debenture, was 3.449. So that pretty
Wow.
closely tracks to a resi mortgage. So it's a great way to lock in a long-term fixed rate. And so volume on that has not fallen off during the pandemic. In fact, volume actually increased a billion a year over the last couple years. The average project for the 504 is about 2 million, and the average 504 loan is about 800,000. So you can see the types of projects that are being used for that. There is an equipment only piece, but most people use it for real estate. So that's sort of the lay of the land of the different types of programs.
A quick question on the personal guarantee. Let's take the 504 with a 50-40-10. I'm still personally guaranteeing 100% of it.
Yeah, so the bank can do whatever I believe that they want. I need to double check my facts on that. But the SBA is pretty serious about personal guarantees. Their core requirements are that any owner over 20% has to guarantee. That's in the SOP. And the SOP is about 500 and some pages and 590 pages. They updated it in October of 2020. And that discusses all the underwriting, what the oversight of the lenders that participate in the program, and it has these core requirements that include the personal guarantees in it.
So we'll have to guarantee the 40 and the 50, or just the 40?
Well, again, the debenture is the 40% piece. So the 50% is based on what the lender's requirements are.
Okay.
That's not governed. That's not governed by the SBA.
Okay. Excellent. So I'm going to go ahead and take that down.
Yeah. So you want to talk a little bit more about the 7A and underwriting?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. Well, the 7A, is a great program because you can do so much with it. You can use it for plant and equipment. You can use it for working capital, debt refinance. You can use it for under collateralized business, airballs, basically for a business acquisition, financing goodwill. There's so many things you can do with it. It's just a general multi-purpose loan. But there's rules. And like I say, this 590 pages of the SOP gets into a lot of those rules. The first thing that you really need to understand when you're dealing with SBA is what kind of lender are you dealing with? Are you dealing with a lender that is delegated to make their own decisions? Or is it a lender that has to go to the SBA for approvals? And that matters because there's some leeway that the preferred lenders have, and they can move a little bit more quickly. Also, in the end of the day, they have a little bit more experience and, again, have a little bit more leeway. So a preferred lender is going to have a more insight into what the SBA is doing and a little bit more control over it. But the rules are still the rules. There's one thing that most people aren't aware of. It's the character test. If there's any kind of criminal history with the borrower, they have to go through a screening, and there's certain steps that the lenders have to take. If they're a preferred lender, they can make their own decisions, but if they're not, they have to go to the SBA. But there's some background information they have to do. Have they had a default on any government debt? There's a website called sam.gov, and if the business or its owners have defaulted on any kind of government debt, that's an automatic screen out. In addition to those types of things, which normally banks really don't get that detailed in my experience, this is a program only for U.S. businesses. So a business located outside the country or an owner who is not a citizen or a legal resident is not eligible. So there's a lot of bells and whistles that are added onto the program that you might not consider sort of traditional underwriting.
Not paying government debt is an automatic disqualifier. How about a prior bankruptcy?
No, that's not an automatic disqualifier. I just need to explain it. Now, obviously, with the guarantee program, a lender is going to overlay and superimpose on the SBA rule book their own rules and their own credit policy. So just because the SBA doesn't make that as a non-starter, the lender that you're working with may have that as their own policy. There's very few lenders that say, I'll only do whatever the SBA says and I won't do anything more or less. Most all banks and finance companies have their own policy that they overlay on top. And, getting to know each lender and their policies is important when you're looking to originate a loan for a client.
Another quick question on the 7A, you said collateral. One of the advantages is there something about the collateral. So I don't want to misquote you. Can you explain that a little better?
Yeah, there's actually something called, having a brain freeze, fully secured test. So the SBA will apply certain values to different assets. So, for example, land would be one value, developed property, real estate would be another value, equipment, depending on if it's new, used, or what, is a different value. Receivables and inventory have a different value. Basically, the lender has to line out all the collateral that they are taking, apply those valuations, and do the math at the bottom of the page and see if the loan has got enough collateral or not enough collateral. And if there's not enough collateral, then the lender is required to go and get as much as they can from the owners. And there's the SOP talks about that as well. They really are looking for personal real estate, any other business assets that are available that the lender hadn't taken, but they don't give any value to, like we say, goodwill or intangible assets. There's no value associated to that. So a lot of business acquisition loans will be not fully secured. So the owners will have to come up with more collateral if they have it. Otherwise, it will remain as an undersecured loan on the SBA books. And that's okay with the SBA. And that's okay with the lender because they're getting that nice guarantee. But when you come down to the end of the day, when you're trying to work something out, if the SBA sees the loan is not fully secured, that's a red flag. It makes it harder.
To initiate the loan, to get it written in the first place.
No, later when you're trying to do a workout. It's a double-edged sword.
Yeah, I really like the under collateralized part of that as a borrower. How do you get that? And how under collateralized can you be?
You can be zero collateral. If a business acquisition is 100% goodwill and you don't have anything on your personal financial statement and that's it, the SBA is not going to say no to that. You still have to find a lender who will be willing to absorb that risk, but with an 85% guarantee, they might.
Okay. So a lender might look for 85% coverage, knowing they cover themselves and let the 15 be an airball.
There's the express loan is basically a small loan. I think that during the pandemic, they allowed to go up to $1 million. And we think they're going to permanently go up to maybe 750. But, they don't even apply the values on the express loans. So who knows what the collateral is? And a lot of those are credit scored. So, everything I am talking about, unless I mention otherwise, it relates to the standard 7A. The express and some of the other flavors have some different rules that you have to, refer back to the rule book about the SOP. That's why it's 590 pages, is because it's always this way except for these times. And so the express, that valuation stuff doesn't apply. And that's a great loan program for small dollar amounts because it's a I believe a 90% guarantee, or no, I'm sorry, it's a little less, but it's a lot easier paperwork. I think it's 75. Your chart's got it. But it's a lot easier paperwork. You don't have to do all the paperwork from the lender's standpoint. It's simpler underwriting. You don't have to do all the things that you have to do for the standard 7A.
Great. So I was going to ask about maintenance as the loan's performing, what kind of reporting to the bank, to the SBA, and then go into workouts. But I'll just pause. If anybody else wants to ask questions about kind of structure and the things we've been talking about so far, please jump in now while it's topical.
Yeah. So I just have one question. Lunelle, did you start to say that the 7A was an unsecured loan? I'm not sure if I heard that correct.
You can have an unsecured loan if there is no collateral and if the owners don't have any collateral.
Okay, great. Thank you.
But it would still require personal guarantees.
Yes.
Even
Definitely.
if the owners have no collateral.
Oh, right.
Yes,
Okay.
definitely.
Thanks.
And I imagine that is because, unlike a bank who can't chase you forever, the U.S. Treasury can chase you forever.
You hit on a really good point. They really, that investment and the reason lenders really like a guarantee is it's the commitment that the owner's making to the business. And when a borrower borrows from the SBA, many don't really realize this, but that commitment's a lot longer and a lot deeper than they would ever make to a lender, because the full force of the U.S. government is going to be coming after collecting that loan, not just from the business, but from the guarantors. Yeah, the U.S. Treasury, they can make your life, they can garnish this and collect that and deduct this and that and all sorts of good stuff.
Absolutely. So then we have a loan. It's performing. The business is fine. The reporting, I believe, is basically to my bank, and then the bank has to report to the SBA.
Yeah. So once you get an SBA loan, the borrower has to do some basic things, just like they should normally do, is to provide financial statements every year. But the SBA is required to the lender is required to collect those on the 7A loans, and they also have to do a site visit every year. And the site visit doesn't just say, hey, how are y'all doing? Anything I can do for you? The SBA expects them to assess that collateral and see if all the pieces of collateral that they took on the loan are still there, and basically not necessarily completely re-underwrite the loan, but just check to make sure everything that they're supposed to have is still there. The life insurance is often a requirement for one of these loans. That's another way you can get an unsecured loan, is they will require a life insurance policy, and the SBA expects those policies to all be in force. If the lender lets any of these things lapse or fails to do what's required in the SOP for the entire life of the loan, they jeopardize that guarantee and may not get paid if there is a default. They might not get the loan purchased back. There's a whole rule book on loan servicing. It's called SOP 5057-2. It's only 162 pages. But in addition to that stuff, the lender has to report on the loan every month to the SBA. They have to report if it's current or not, if they've made any kind of curtailment of interest to help the business, if they've deferred it, principal payments. They can do that for a little while, but they have to report on it. And there's one other wrinkle that you all need to pay attention to, is if the lender that is made the loan, if they sold that loan on the secondary market. There's a very active market for these guaranteed pieces of these loans. Investors buy them, and lenders sell the loans and can make a lot of money doing it. And so if they have sold the loan, it hamstrings the lender on what can and cannot be done, just like you might imagine one of these securitized real estate loans. It's very similar to that. And, you know, while we're talking about servicing, over the life of 20-something years, you know, there may be a lot of different things that happen. And the SBA puts the lenders in sort of a mother may I position. There's only certain things that they can do without going and asking the SBA for permission. They can't increase the loan. They can't take a compromised balance. They can't release a guarantor. The loan can't be assumed. The business can't, you know, ownership can't change in 12 months after the disbursement. There's just a whole long list of things that the lender cannot do in servicing that loan without the SBA's permission. Now, a lot they do delegate, but there's quite a few. There's 2 pages worth in the SOP, the servicing SOP, pages 23 and 24, if you want to take a look, about what they can't do.
How do the requirements differ for the EIDL?
The EIDL is its own animal. They have their own SOP and their own servicing. And the SBA, I actually happen to have worked on a project for the SBA on this one, and they modified their procedures to some degree to relax and really put more of a benefit to the borrowers. Now, I don't know if you all have been seeing in the news, but the direct lending program with the EIDL is a real headliner. The Auditor General of the SBA has criticized the agency for their handling of that program. A lot of arrests have been made, lots of fraud has been identified. It's a pretty big hot news topic. You don't have to look far to see that. That's one of the benefits of the guarantee program is on the PPP. There was fraud, but the lenders were doing some due diligence themselves, whereas the EIDL loan program, the SBA has been making disaster loans for a long time, but they were generally real estate loans. And these were pretty much unsecured up to a certain dollar amount, and very few even had any kind of real estate or hard asset collateral. But again, they have their own rules and procedures that the SBA is following.
That's great. So then when we get in trouble, I didn't raise prices fast enough. I was waiting on that container from China. I had a bunch of goods in Ukraine. They haven't been able to ship recently. How does that all happen?
Well, I'll tell you, as a lender, you have a whole lot more to consider in trying to help your 7(a) borrower. First of all, you have to really worry about how good your guarantee is. You know, did you do everything right? Has your loan been reviewed, and do you have some deficiencies? Did you not underwrite it right? Were they not the right size business? Did you skip the character check? I mean, you know, there's 101 things that they could have done wrong, and could cause the guarantee to either be invalid or adjusted. They call that in SBA lingo repair. So the SBA might make the lender repair the loan, basically taking a haircut on their guarantee. One example I'd like to share is equipment lists and valuations. You know, for an undersecured loan or even a loan that is secured, one of the requirements is that any collateral valued over $5,000 or more has to be enumerated and identified and valued. And this is a common thing lenders that don't do, is leaving out lists and values of the equipment. And this is something right out of the box that the SBA might identify and pull partial guarantee for. Another one we talked about, the site visits. You know, is that collateral run away? You know, is it still there if they sold equipment that should be on the loan? and the lender not know about it, what's going on. So, the SBA expects the lender to be an active manager of that loan and that asset. Then the second thing is what we talked about before, is has the loan been sold or not? Because, your hands are really tied as a lender if you've sold that loan. And then, the SBA expects the lender to, quote, liquidate the loan in a prudent and commercially reasonable manner. The SOP doesn't have a whole section on workouts and turnarounds. It's basically a liquidation. Their theory, that I've seen over the years is the first loss is the best loss. Any legal expenses of $10,000 or more are expected to be reported on a liquidation plan that is submitted to the SBA. So, in my experience, the SBA program was built for the smaller borrowers, borrowers that don't have the financial sophistication or the resources for turnaround consultants. And so it's unfortunate that that's sort of my view of the lay of the land. But the people working at the SBA for the most part are not turnaround people or bankers or maybe even business owners. There's a few bankers that have gone into the ranks, but mostly not. So if a lender is sitting here with a problem loan and he's trying to figure out what the heck to do, he's got lots of things to consider. There's nothing prohibiting a lender from sending in a liquidation plan that involves a workout. But the lender themselves may not fully understand the turnaround workout plan. And here's the thing: the SBA lending is quite siloed. I'm sure you have discovered this. The people in the SBA department don't understand necessarily workouts, and the people in the workout department don't necessarily understand SBA. So, it's like sort of, we don't do that here, right? But there's definitely a bias to liquidate and then collect on the guarantee from the lender standpoint. So you're going to be pushing uphill, pushing that rock uphill.
So, and I think this is obvious, but I'll just ask it. If, there's a situation where I know the bank would work with me and will let me, kind of stretch things out and be accommodating and give me 6-12 months to get my feet underneath me. If I've got an SBA backed loan, they're going to be saying none of that, just liquidate and get us our money back, and that's it.
Again, I wouldn't say always, never, right? But it's always going to depend. There are some things the lender can do without going to the SBA, and you want to try to, push them to do that as much as they can. There's something called a servicing and liquidation action matrix, and Jeff, you may want to send that out after the call. It's, I don't know if I can hold it up here. It's sort of a chart that says, here's what we can do, here's what we can't do.
Is that in the FBA 50? Oh, yes.
Yeah, and the red is the things that they have to go to for the SBA's permission. So, there's a long list of things that a lender can't do. There are some things they can do. So I would get this list and I would challenge, yep, that's it, thanks. I would challenge the lender to push them as hard as you can push them. But if that loan has been sold on the secondary market, that's a whole nother problem.
Because if the loan was sold on secondary market, then neither my bank or the SBA really care about me and my workout plan.
On the secondary market, the secondary investor, the market investor, the owner of that debt has to approve everything.
Okay. Well, I've noticed when your bank loan is sold or your bank sold, the new people don't really care about you like, your friendly neighborhood banker did, who got you into it.
Everything is great on the front end, and then on the back end is sometimes a different story. There's a joke about Satan or something, I don't know. But you asked me before about shortcut stretch outs, haircuts, and other alterations. Again, there are some things that the lender can do. And if they get a liquidation plan, they want to send it in to the SBA and back it, there's a chance it might get approved. So don't give up. just think it through, see if you can get a banker that will work with you, right? And that maybe understands. You're going to have a better luck if you can get somebody that will, put their head around, outside of the box.
My experience with the IRS is if I owe them just an insane amount of money, but I say, here's what I can do over the next 6 years. I'll live in complete poverty and you'll get basically all the spare change, but I can only do it for 6 years. That's largely good enough for them. And I, from experience, I feel that's right. I don't know if it's textbook right, but that's what I've run into. Is the SBA similar? Or will they, the IRS's opinion is we'll torture you for 6 years. We don't want to torture you for 20.
I have not worked in the liquidation center for the SBA, but again, the people I know that have, they're of the view the first loss is the best loss. So that's the mindset that exudes from my experience and interactions.
Okay.
Maybe some on the call have had some of their own experiences.
And I'm watching the time. We've got 10 minutes, so I don't want to hog this more. If you guys have questions or even thoughts, throw them out there. This is obviously y'all's meeting.
Lunelle, hi. I hope this is an okay question. With my work at SCORE, I actually have a client who's working with the SBA right now on a 7A loan, and he was recently rejected, and rejected for that 7A loan. He has a pharmacy business, and I'm not clear exactly as to why. Could you tell us like some of the reasons why people don't get these loans or the small businesses turned down?
Okay, so first of all, let me ask, was it a guaranteed lender who was processing it as a preferred lender, or was it going through general processing?
I think it was a preferred lender. He was working with a lender. I don't know which one, but he was working with somebody.
Okay, well, let's look at it both ways. So if they're working with a non-preferred lender, that lender has to send the loan application package, which is multiple hundreds of pages, into the approval center for approval. And many applications are, quote, screened out by the SBA. And it's not necessarily because they're not eligible, it's because the lender didn't do the paperwork right. So oftentimes, and when I started packaging 7A loans, I discovered quickly that I was the bigger problem, not doing things right than the program. Now, there are some reasons that the SBA would not have an eligible small business. Like we said, the character stuff, that's a non-starter, right? If it's a non-U.S. citizen or legal resident, that's a non-starter. So there are some definite non-starters, but the SBA is going to bend over backwards to try to approve everything if it's an eligible business. And I encourage you to pull down that SOP if you're consulting with small businesses and read that section on the core requirements. And when you pull it down, don't bother printing it because it'll take 2 reams of paper. But you can look at the primary eligibility core requirements starting on page 117. And it talks about what the minimum requirements are. It talks about the ineligible businesses. There's no reason a pharmacy would be ineligible. I will tell you that if it's in a legal business, now there's a whole bunch of businesses that are businesses that would be ineligible, but I don't see a pharmacy being one unless they were a cannabis business.
Okay, yeah, no, it's not, and they're pretty profitable as well. So, but I've yet to find out the details. I was just wondering if you could, provide some color, and that's helpful. Thank you.
If it was a preferred lender, then it didn't get to the SBA. They made their decision themselves.
I see.
And that would be an underwriting thing. So the key question is, who made the decision? Is it the SBA, and what was it? Or was the preferred lender, and maybe it's their own policy. And just because you've been turned down by one lender doesn't mean you shouldn't try with a second one, because they all have different underwriting requirements.
Okay, thank you.
My pleasure. And by the way, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn and follow up with me with any questions. I'll do my best to answer. So if you get some information and want to chat about it, I'm happy to chat with you.
And Lunelle, do you want to give your email address as well?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn, and you can email me at siegel.lunelle@gmail.com.
Excellent. Thank you.
One other thing that I guess I should mention is tax verification. One of the things that the SBA requires is verification of taxes. There was a loan fraud scam that originated in Miami back 25 years ago, where basically fake tax returns were being invented and being used to underwrite loans. Mark, do you remember this story? But you believe it. But anyway, so borrowers were basically sending in fake loan applications based on these tax returns. And, you know, the SBA finally figured out what was going on, and they started using the form 4506 to verify all tax returns for all borrowers. Now, that was relaxed a little bit during the pandemic because the IRS got backed up with all the PPP loans that had to be verified and the idle loans that had to be verified. But, you know, I think they're back to business now. So, you know, they generally do underwrite off tax returns, not financial statements. So that's important to know. And that tax return is going to be verified.
I would, the only thing I would take exception with is that I think they're still backed up.
Yeah, they're giving the lenders like a 90-day second try window, and they'll actually let them go ahead and fund the loan and verify it later. But that's a little barn door horse type thing.
I meant the IRS. I was thinking specifically of ERC credits.
They're backed up in granting ERC credits.
Processing and paying.
Okay.
There's one other thing I should probably mention that's noteworthy when it comes to purchasing real estate using the 7A and 504 for real estate. You can't be a landlord. You know, you have to run your business out of that real estate. And so if you're working with clients that want to maybe take advantage of that 504 loan program and get this long-term fixed rate 90% financing, they have to be able to occupy a certain percentage of it right away, and then more within a very short period of time. So it's not meant for real estate investors. These are business loans for people who hire people and make things and do things. I think that's really the high points I wanted to cover, Jeff.
That was wonderful. I really appreciate it. Anybody else? Other questions, comments?
I just say thanks. It was very informative. We appreciate the time.
My pleasure. And like I say,
Yeah.
feel free to reach out. Let me be your resource. If you have any questions, happy to try to help.
Lunelle, this is wonderful. I greatly appreciate it, and appreciate everybody being here. And we'll get a schedule out and have one of these about every 2 months, and try to keep the group active. And at some point, also liquidity will be gone, and there will be some workouts in the world again. We'll see. All right. Well, thank you all, Lunelle. This is fantastic. Thank you very much, and appreciate it. And y'all have a good evening.